I don't understand for the life of me why world leaders keep trying to pacify Vladimir Putin. Trump is doing this. There's no doubt about this. And European leaders are talking about we're going to do sanctions, but wait, we're gonna do sanctions next week. But no, we're going to do it. It's coming, and it's just not helping. By the way, if you're wondering, this is what AI thinks Vladimir Putin's face and bad haircut look like on a toddler. All right, let's start looking at the news here. Donald Trump posted this just a little while ago. This was, I'll be speaking by telephone to President Vladimir Putin of Russia on Monday at 10 a.m. The subject of the call will be stopping the bloodbath that is killing, on average, more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, and trade. Oh boy. I will then be speaking to President Zelensky of Ukraine, and then with President Zelensky, various members of NATO. Hopefully, it'll be a productive day. A ceasefire will take place, and this very violent war, a war that should have never happened, will end. God bless us all. Okay. Speaking to Putin's not bad, but speaking to him about the war and trade, I think this kind of answers the question of why we're doing, well, that. Because there's a reason that what they're trying to get to. Okay. Military expert and former SBU officer Ivan Stupak predicts Russia may not return to the negotiating table until October, as they have the upper hand on the front lines. With a summer offensive being prepared, talks are unlikely before a potential economic collapse later this year. So, for my money, I would say Putin doesn't want to come to the table anytime soon. So this article in the Financial Times explains why the U.S. went along with the European ceasefire fandango. They made Putin an offer. He rejected it. So now rather than penalize him, which is what you're supposed to do, they keep making him offers to reject. On Thursday last week, senior Russian officials told Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, that Putin did not want to discuss the 22-point peace plan that Witkoff had drawn up with Ukrainian and European input. 3 people briefed on the discussions told the Financial Times. Those 22 points were discussed at length the following day on a call between Ukrainian and U.S. officials. But if Putin doesn't want to do it, then what do? We just pacify the toddler. I mean, that's how we're acting. And we're getting more of the bad behavior because we're doing it this way. Okay, if Ukraine doesn't recognize Russian sovereignty, the next demand will be for 6 regions, they say, in the negotiation talks at the very end of the talks in Istanbul. And then this is out on on Russian TV. They're kind of gloating about this kind of thing. So, yeah. And then we see, what's the reaction? Well, I showed you what Merch said. I showed you what Starmer of Britain said. I also showed you what Prime Minister Meloni said. So let's look at some more reaction. Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk. The information was clear. The Russian side did not show goodwill. The Russian side was not willing to negotiate. The Russian side set absolutely unacceptable conditions again. Okay. And then what did Kaya Kallas say? Everyone wants peace except Russia. Sanctions and political isolation are essential to keep up the pressure on Russia. That's why unity matters more than ever. I think she's right. And then Macron says that Trump plans to contact Russia in the coming hours or days, and you saw the tweet, to discuss the next steps on the war in Ukraine. Macron also said this. He spoke with the POTUS, President of the United States, from Albania. Once again, Putin refused the unconditional ceasefire proposed by the U.S. and backed by Ukraine and Europe. By rejecting peace talks, Russia proves it does not want peace. Just time to prolong the war. A united response is coming. This is what I mean. Oh, it's coming. We're about to do it. Here come the sanctions. They're coming. We're going to have sanctions, and we're going to do more. But they postponed the sanctions because Putin was going to do this thing. They should have put the sanctions on and said, yeah, if you like that, we got more on the other side if you don't actually come to the table. But they didn't. Macron believes that Trump will, quote, react to Putin's cynicism, unquote, in the face of Russia's rejection of ceasefire proposals. I'm not sure that he is. Now, I've given you the zigzag theory that Trump could zig or zag because he doesn't have any ideological compass. But he's zagged. he zagged and zagged and zagged and zagged, and he hasn't zigged yet. And I'm not sure that he will zig. He even emphasized that Trump is claiming to be aiming for peace, and he'll respond to Putin's disregard for negotiations. I'm not seeing it yet. I hope he does. I just don't see it yet. Okay, here's those leaders again. And I think this was in Albania. And yeah, but you got to do the thing. You can't just talk about it. Okay, Senator Lindsey Graham in the United States says Putin's Russia is playing games and it needs to stop. Graham's pushing new legislation with 70 plus co-sponsors in the Senate. 70 out of 100, clearly you've got plenty to hit Russia with tougher sanctions and slap tariffs on countries buying Russian oil and gas. Enough is enough. But all he needs is for Trump to say, go ahead and do it. Pass it. Like, pass it in the Senate. And if he does that, he can tell Mike Johnson in the House, put that on the table in the House, and there'll be plenty of, there will certainly be enough votes in the House to pass that if Trump allows it. And then Trump will have to sign it. And if they do that, great. But they haven't done it. Okay. Tough talk, Gary Kasparov says, as a reply to that thing by Lindsey Graham, tough talk. Russia isn't playing games. They're killing innocent people every day, while the West talks about what they might do. And that's precisely the problem. And I saw this. This was an interesting article. Quote, we are shocked the face-eating leopard keeps eating our face. Yeah. Well, who knew? What about that? Well, here's the article in Bloomberg. Europe waits to see where Trump swerves to next on Russia. Here's just I highlighted quite a few paragraphs here, but it's worth it, I promise you. European officials have no idea what President Donald Trump will say next about Russia's war in Ukraine, or whether or where that may leave them. The first direct talks in 3 years between Ukraine and Russia ended in Turkey on Friday without agreement on a ceasefire, and with Moscow repeating a list of maximalist demands. Nothing's changed for them. Then they had a phone call with Trump, and they thought that they were on the same page. While the Europeans voiced disappointment at the outcome of the Istanbul talks, it's unclear whether they've tilted Trump toward a tougher approach to Russian President Vladimir Putin. You'd hope that Putin saying, no, I'm not doing anything, or having maximalist demands would have pushed Trump the right direction, but his comments don't seem to have shown that. A week ago, there was optimism. Diplomacy had borne fruit. An ultimatum: if Putin doesn't accept an unconditional 30-day ceasefire, they'd hit Russia with massive sanctions. When Putin sidestepped that demand, the mood started to shift. And then Trump, who was calling for the ceasefire, instead urged Zelensky to meet with Russia immediately to see if a peace deal was possible. Okay, so the Russian side set out these hardline demands, and then the Russian delegation said Putin would only agree to a ceasefire once Ukraine had withdrawn all its troops from those regions and surrendered them, including all the regions that Russia never actually occupied, which is bizarre. Okay. And then publicly, Europeans are sticking to their lines that sanctions are coming and Putin better, watch out, because they're going to continue to provide sanctions until Putin, comes to a truce. But Putin continues to reject a truce. They've been effusively praising Trump's efforts to end the war. Alongside the U.S. and more than 30 other partners, we have been clear that we will not stand for Russia kicking a ceasefire down the road, said UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. A full unconditional ceasefire must be agreed, and if Russia is unwilling to come to the negotiating table, Putin must pay the price. Well, they say the right things. In private, though, European officials are frustrated and baffled by Trump's apparent constant swerving. One said they hoped this week's developments would make it clear to Trump that the Russians aren't serious about peace talks and that the U.S. should respond strongly. Still, some believe that the U.S. president will follow through on earlier threats to impose so-called secondary sanctions and banking restrictions on Moscow and its enablers. He could also endorse the bill prepared by U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham that would enact bone-crushing new sanctions. The officials note that U.S. views toward Russia have hardened in recent weeks, and that Trump administration officials see Putin as the main impediment to a peace deal. Okay, you would think that it has hardened. It doesn't seem to have. Last couple of paragraphs, others are skeptical that Trump has the appetite for the measures proposed by Graham, which would include punitive tariffs on countries that buy Moscow's oil and gas and other energy products. Okay, I was talking about that today. Just why? Like Ukraine, like okay, I'm asking the question legitimately. Can Trump ever break Putin's spell? Because it just seems like he just keeps going back to, but Putin and I, we're tight, we're friends. He'll talk to me. We can make a deal. In spite of all the evidence that's out there, he seems to keep saying that. The European Union is set to adopt a new package of sanctions targeting Russia's shadow fleet of oil tankers next week. And I don't know that anything's going to come of it. I mean, I really just don't know. Now, I talked about this kind of thing in other videos here, what really happened in the Istanbul peace conference. And so if you want to know some of the background, you can go back to that. And I'll just set that aside at this point. Now, Europe is talking about its 17th sanctions package against Russia, which will include nearly 200 shadow fleet oil tankers and cargo ships. I don't know why you didn't do this before. I mean, it's a good thing if you do the thing, but you got to do the thing. You can't just talk about doing the thing. And I hope that they do the thing, because the Biden administration, one of the last things that they did was put a huge list of tankers and sanction, and that really slowed things down. Do more of that. Okay. Putin extends Russia's national defense plan by 2 years. Meanwhile, Putin's doing this. Extending Russia's national defense plan by 2 years, now in effect to 2027, per an official decree. Putin's not planning to stop anytime soon. This comes shortly after he signed a law enforcing mandatory one-year military conscription. He's not planning to go anywhere anytime soon. And then you see Solyov talking about things like this. Solyov is calling for strikes on Europe in retaliation for the 17th package on anti-Russian sanctions, of anti-Russian sanctions. So let's hit the places, he says, where decisions are made in Europe, and say that it has nothing to do with the meeting in Istanbul, shall we? This is just retaliation for the 17th package of sanctions. The Elysee Palace, it's long outdated. There's absolutely nothing to do there. We can bomb the Reich Chancellery out of habit, just out of habit. So he's going on saying stupid stuff about this. And this is where the Russian mindset is. And then this happened. This was, okay. The head of the Russian delegation, his name is Medinsky, hinted that someone at the negotiation would lose a loved one. Ukraine's diplomat, Sergei Klista, I'm so sorry if I slaughtered that, confirmed the death of his 23-year-old nephew, Max, just today. The intimidation didn't work, he said. It only strengthens our resolve to stop the evil. Now, I don't know if this guy was somehow targeted, or if he was on the front line, and, bad things can happen to people on the front. I don't know if he's targeted. It could have been, but this is where the Russians are, making these kinds of threats. So you just don't know. And this diplomat said, whoever in our delegation was targeted by this intimidation tactics, I, or possibly all of us, say it didn't work. In fact, it has absolutely had the opposite effect. It only strengthens our resolve to stop the evil that brags that they will kill, and determined to keep killing our fellow citizens. Max was 23 years old and will stay young in our memories forever. It's absolutely terrible that he died. I don't know if it was targeted by Russia somehow, how they would know that, but it's evil, or it's really, really evil. If they're actually targeting. But that's where the Russians are in the negotiations. Now, so where will that leave us? With a telephone call from a conversation between Putin and Trump, which will take place on the 19th? I don't know that anything's going to, I'm really frustrated by seeing that he's going to talk about and trade. And he's talking about and trade. That's a very bad sign to my mind. Okay. Meanwhile, we see this, Donald Tusk talking about only 2 days before the Polish elections, a group of Russian hackers active on Telegram have attacked the civic platform internet sites. Their targets are also websites of my coalition partners. Our services are conducting intensive operations. The attack is still on. Again, if you keep pacifying the toddler, you keep getting more of that. And then we see Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski saying the only country that could really put Putin in his place is China. Now, the U.S. could do it, but the U.S. doesn't have the will to do it, not under the Trump administration. He says that Russia is now China's economic vassal. I think that that's right. A trade embargo from Beijing could force Moscow to back down, but he admits that that seems unlikely. I think that it's very fair. It's unlikely. I don't see the Chinese having any appetite to do that. Finally, Timothy Milovanov says Putin is no strategic mastermind. Putin plays Russian roulette. The phrasing here is beautiful. He's playing Russian roulette with Trump's patience by skipping Istanbul. He really is. I think Putin is playing to see how long he can go before something goes wrong. I don't know that Trump's going to do anything, but he is playing Russian roulette. By sending low-level aides to meet Zelensky, Putin undercut his image of a strategic mastermind, his biggest miscalculation yet. But that miscalculation is predicated on what Trump might do, and that's a good question yet. All right, we'll leave you with these kind of things. If Putin is allowed to keep his hold on Mariupol in Ukraine, thousands upon thousands of war crimes, mass graves with civilians, and other crimes against humanity not seen on that scale since World War II will never be investigated and never go unpunished. And then you get more of this. And that's why this is so important. Okay, I'll leave you with this last little thought from Darth Putin, my friends. My 3-day war may last 20 years. Remember, they threatened that we fought with Sweden for 20 years and we can keep fighting for years to come. How long can you fight? My 3-day war may last 20 years. I remain a master strategist. All right. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.